Hey everyone, I hope you all are doing absolutely fine. My name is Abhijit Singh and welcome to the video. So today we are going to talk about how to implement GraphQL subscriptions in express-graphql. As you might know, express-graphql officially does not support subscriptions and might think, then why should we do this? But believe me, there are a bunch of reasons. Like, it may be the case that you don't like SDL, but at the same time you want to use subscriptions. Or it may be the case that you already have an backend that uses Express GraphQL and don't want to move it to Apollo server, etc., but use subscriptions. So today we are gonna look how to do this by implementing this in a simple chat application that updates in real time, leveraging the GraphQL subscriptions. So before we get started, let me give you a quick demo of the final application that we are gonna build in this video. So this is a simple chat application. It asks for your username. Let's enter one and log in. So here we can send message like hi, and we can open another tab and it will be looked as a new user. Let's enter another username and log in. So we can see that the previous message is already here. We can also send message from here like this, and it appears here. We can also add multiple users or more users to this chat, like let's add John, and previous two messages are already present here, and let's say he also hi I says I also, and we can see in previous two windows the message from John has appeared. So you get the point what we are gonna build. So let's get started. So if you wanna follow along and get to the point where I am currently, you can download the starter files from the repository linked in the description of this video. Basically, I have already done the basic setup and React component. So let me give you a quick walkthrough of the code, then we shall start. So this is the front end folder. We can find there is one container called chat container. It conditionally shows the login page, and once the login is done, it sets the state and it's passed on to the child component. So we have mainly two child components. Leave aside the header. First one is message form. Basically, what it does is takes an input and submits it. Currently, there is no action taken on the submit. We'll figure this out in a bit. And this is a message list component. This will be responsible for showing all the list of messages once we are done with the backend. So let's get started. So quickly, let's get to the server.js. So let's install a few dependencies that we're gonna require. So we are in server directory. Let's run npm install. We are gonna require express GraphQL, express GraphQL, then course and GraphQL tag, GraphQL subscriptions, and subscriptions transport ws. And one more, JSON server. If you don't know about JSON server, I will tell in a bit. We forgot one thing, GraphQL tag tools. Meanwhile this installs, let me tell what JSON server is. Basically, it allows us to get full-fledged REST API without implementation of any database, it uses JSON file as database and gives us full functionality of CRUD operations in REST API. It will take a while. So yeah, these are installed. Let me close the terminal and we will gonna bring in express from express and course from we then gonna use app execute express, then set up course like this, and we gonna set up HTTP server. Let's just first define the port for the server. Let it be 3001 and just do app.listen on port, and we are gonna console.log HTTP server listening on port. Yeah, let's save this. Now let's just quickly set up JSON server. For this, I will create a new file inside server directory with name db.json. Basically, it will be a contain array of messages. So messages and empty array. Yeah, it's done. So let's start the JSON server. Move into the terminal. JSON server, watch for db.json, and we'll specify port, which will be 3003. Yeah. So as we can see that it's running on port 3003 and it's already giving us endpoint, which is /messages. We can use put, post, get, every CRUD operation on this endpoint. Now we can move on to set up our schema for the express-graphql. For it, we'll create another file with name schema.js. Inside, we'll bring in first do this require. Now object type string and schema. We will also require GraphQL list. Yeah, pretty much this. Now we will define message type. So it will be message type and it will be a new GraphQL object type, and we'll specify a name which will be message, and it will contain fields. It will have a ID of type GraphQL string. It will also have username. It will contain the name of the person who has sent the message, and it will be of type as similar GraphQL string. It will also contain the message body, which will be also of type GraphQL string. Now let's create root query. So Again, new GraphQL object type. It will contain name, root query, fields, which will be messages, and type. It will contain list of messages or array of messages. So GraphQL list of message type. This. It will contain a resolve function. Let's make it async. And first argument is parent value, which we will not use, and args, which we also not be using, but yeah. So now we need to fetch from our REST API, which we get from the JSON server. So let's import fetch and from crossfetch. Not this. Like this. Now we will fetch the response and await for it from local and the port which we set up for JSON server was 3003 and /messages. Yeah, then we'll parse the messages, or say, let's say data, await response dot JSON, like this, and we will return data like this. Yeah, pretty much this. We are done with the query. Let's do mutation. So let's name this add message, and it will be of type message type, and it will contain args. It will take username of type GraphQL string. It will also take message body of type GraphQL string. Yeah. Now let's define the resolve function. This will be a async again. First argument parent value, second argument args, and so now we have to make post request to localhost /messages, so that JSON server will create new message in the array which we have declared in db.json. So let's do it. And what JSON server returns is the new data that is added to the JSON file. So response will be await fetch /messages, and we have to specify options for this. So method, it will be post, body, it will be JSON dot stringify, and we'll send args because it contains username and body, and JSON server automatically gives ID if we don't provide it. Yeah, like this. And one more thing, we have to specify headers so that it can parse and know which kind of content it's getting. So headers, which will be of we missed a comma here. Yeah, headers and content type, and it will be of type application slash JSON. Yeah, we are done with it. Let's parse the response. Await and return data. So our add message mutation is also done. So let's create a mutation type. It will be new GraphQL object type, and name mutation, and it will contain fields, add message of type add message. Yeah, now we are done with this. Let's create the schema and export it. So font schema equals to new GraphQL schema, and it will take query as root query, and mutation like this. Let's export this. Let's save. We missed a parenthesis here. Yeah, this is fine. So we have created message type, then we have created a root query. So we have created a message type, then we have created root query type, which returns list of messages, and then we have created a mutation, which creates new message in the database. We have mutation type then, and we created schema using new GraphQL schema, then exported the schema. Let's move on to server.js. We have to require schema here, which we just exported from schema.js. So schema require /schema. Yeah, and we also require and from express-graphql. Now we will wire up the express-graphql. So app.use, path is GraphQL /GraphQL, and graph HTTP. It will give request. We will return an object, return an object that contains schema, like this. So we are done with this on the backend. Let's move on to the front end and test this. So let's go to front end. source src index.js. Let's open the terminal, cd into frontend, and let's do npm install first. It will take a bit. Yeah, it's done now. Then we have to install basically two dependencies. Let's do it. Npm install. One is Apollo client, and another is Apollo link ws. This we will require when we work on subscriptions. Let's just install right now. Let's wire up the Apollo. So we want to import Apollo client provider in memory cache and HTTP link from Apollo client. Let's create HTTP link. It will be new HTTP link and provide URI, which will be http:// and the port we given was 3001/GraphQL. Yeah. Let's also create cache. Like this, and finally create an instance of client with new Apollo client and pass on link, which will be HTTP link, and cache like this. One last thing to do, wrap the app component in Apollo provider like this, and also provide client to the Apollo provider. Yeah. So we are done wiring up the Apollo client. Now let's move on to the message list component, which is this. Let's import use query, and it will come from Apollo client. Before calling use query, let's define the query. We also require the GQL. Basically, it's a wrapper for all the queries like this, and it will contain, and we'll take ID, username, and body like this. Now let's call the use query hook. We will destructure data and loading from this. Now we have to return the list of messages, so we will check if messages are not loading. So now we have to style incoming and outgoing messages differently. So let's check if the username is equal to the username of current user. For this, we define message type and Let's just map over users first. For this, let's create message map, and it will be data dot map. It will give a message, and let's move this inside this function. Now let's check if message dot username is equals to username, then the type will be message outgoing, else incoming. I have done the styling for message outgoing and incoming already in the CSS file. Now let's return some HTML. So it will be a div with class name message and message type, like this. Inside this div there will be a paragraph which will give dot user name, and with class name of name. We only want to display the username if it's an incoming message. Let's check for this. So let's cut it out, and we will check message type. If this is equals to incoming, then we will return this JSX, else we will return null. Let's save this. Yeah. Below it we will return message body with p tag again, and it will contain dot body, and we will return this message map inside here, not here, inside here, like switch map. And we will return this only if not loading, like this. Let's save this. Yeah. So we are done with the query part. Let's move on to the mutation part. So for this, we have to go to the message form. Let's import use mutation and GQL from Apollo client. Let's define the mutation. GQL mutation, and let's say add message. It will take two variables or arguments. One is username of type string, another is body of type again string. Like this, it will call add mutation, add message mutation with username. I'm not focusing on explaining this part much because I think you all know this. we are watching this video, and body of body, yeah, and we'll grab id from it. Let's say this. Now we can use add message, use mutation, add message, and inside handle submit we will call this add message with variables of username and message. So we are basically done with all the query and mutation part. Let's test it out. So we need to run the server on the backend. Let's open the terminal, new terminal. I will be using nodemon to start the server because as we make changes to the server, nodemon automatically listens for the changes and restarts the server. So nodemon -- ignore. As I told you that JSON server saves data into db.json, so we don't want any changes made to db.json to restart the server, so we ignore it and start server.js. Okay, looks like we had a typo in server file. Let's go to, okay, so there should be http graphql. Let's save this, and yeah, our server is running. Now let's move on to front end. Let's do cd frontend npm start. So let's enter the username, like my username, login. So we don't see any message because there is no message in the database. Let's say I write hi and enter. So we don't see any message here because we have not implemented any subscription functionality yet, but we can check it by refreshing it, and again I'll log in and we can see that the message is here. And if I log in with any other username, see Mike, yeah, we can see that there is a message from Abhijit here. Yeah, so we have come quite far. We have implemented backend GraphQL schema with express-graphql, and we have then worked on front-end integration with Apollo client. Now let's move on to the backend and add the real-time functionality to our app by implementing subscriptions. Let me close the terminal. So let's close these all the files. Let's go to server. I will create a new file, subscription.js. Yeah, we will require two things here. First is GQL. This will come from GraphQL tag, this, and another is pub/sub. Basically this will allow us to publish and the events. This will come from GraphQL subscriptions, like this. Let's create an instance of pub/sub, new pub/sub, like this. We have to define type, so create type def, and this will be in GQL tag. Let's create type of message, and it will contain ID of type string. It will contain username of type string again, and body of type string yet again, like this. Now let's create subscription type, and we will name it new message, and it will be of type message, like this. Now we have to create a resolver for this subscription, so let's create it. It will have subscription, and it will be of type new message, it will be an object that contains subscribe property, and it will have a, so basically here we will return an async iterator from pub/sub, and we will look for event new message. So basically what this async iterator does is it looks for an event of type new message that is published, and whenever a new message event is published, this fires up. Yeah, so now we have to export. Let's export pub/sub, because we will require this in another file to publish the event. And let's export also schema. We have to build the schema, so we will require make executable schema, and it will come from GraphQL tools, like this, and we will return make executable schema and pass type def and resolvers. We had a little typo here, missed s. Let's save this, and now let's go to schema.js. Let's require pub/sub, which we just exported. No, pub/sub, and we will require it from /subscription. And now we have to publish the event from our add message mutation. So after we get the data, we will pub/sub dot publish, and type is new message, and let's say new message or data, like this. So whenever add message mutation fires, it will call this pub/sub.publish method, and this will make this pub/sub async iterator to fire up the message to the subscriber of this type. Yeah. So we have done the setup work. We have to wire up the server. So let's go to server.js. First, we will bring in the schema from subscription. As we already have schema, let's rename this to subscription schema, and it will come from /subscription, like this. And we also require create server, and it will come from HTTP. We don't have to install this. This is pre-installed in Node.js. We will also require subscription server, and it will come from subscription transfer WS. So we need a port for WebSocket. So let's define this. Let's name it WS port, and it will be, let's say, 3002. Yeah, this is fine. Below this course, let's create WebSocket server. For this, create server. It will take request response, and we will write it 400 like this, and res dot end. Basically, this is boilerplate. We don't have to do anything else. So we get WS. Now we have to make it listen like we do with app.listen. So we do ws.listen. We provide WS port, and similarly console.log WS, let's say WebSocket on port and WS port like this. So we have our WS WebSocket listening on port 3002 and HTTP listening on port 3001. Now the last part is left to create subscription server. So equals to subscription server dot create. It will take schema, which will be subscription schema, and we have to provide bunch of default properties which we will grab from GraphQL. These are execute and subscribe. This. So we will pass these like this, and on connect we will pass a method, and we will console.log client connected. So whenever a new user connects, we get a message in the console of our backend that client is connected. Now we have to provide two more things, that is the server to use, and it will be WS, which we defined earlier, and path. We will keep the path same /GraphQL. So backend is done. Let's check if there are any errors, and we can see that WebSocket is listening on port 3002, HTTP server listening on port 3001. So now let's move on to the front end. Again, let's go to index.js, which is right here. We have to grab bunch of things, import. We will first import WebSocket link, and it will come from Apollo link WS, and another thing, get and this is from Apollo client utilities. One more thing, we will require split, as we will be configuring two links. One is HTTP link, and another we are gonna create WS link. And take URI and it is ws ://local host and 3002 /GraphQL like this, and we will provide options like reconnect and true. Now we have two links, HTTP link and websocket link. We want queries and mutation to use HTTP link, and websocket should be used by subscription. So to do this, we create a split link, and for this we will use split. What split does is takes first function and gives query as its parameter, and if this function returns true, then the first link will be executed, which is passed after this function, and if this returns false, then the second link will be executed, which is passed after this function. So let's get definition, and it will come from get main definition, and we'll pass on query. Then we will return an expression which gives true or false. So definition dot kind, if this is equals to operation definition and operation subscription. If this is true, then WS link will be used, otherwise HTTP link will be used. The last thing we have to do is replace the link here in the Apollo client to split link like this. Let's save this. Now we have to subscribe to the subscription from the message list component. So let's do this. First of all, we have to import use effect hook. Why we have to use this? Because we want to subscribe to the subscription only once. Otherwise, each re-render will subscribe again, and we will get multiple entries in our Apollo cache. So first let's define the subscription. Let's name it message subscription, and it will be GQL like this. Subscription and of type new message, and we will grab ID, user name and body from this. Last thing left here is first we have to also destruct the subscribe to more. This allows us to subscribe to the subscription. So let's just go to use effect, a method here like this, and here we will call subscribe to more. It will be taking document, and which will be basically this subscription which we have defined just now. So let's say message subscription like this, and second will be update query. This will be a function which will have two args. First is previous data, and second will be data returned by the subscription. What we'll be doing here is, if there is no subscription data, we will return the previous. We forward a parent curly braces here, like this. And if there is subscription data, then we will have a new message which we will get from subscription data dot new message, like this, and we will create updated message list. We will use object.assign for it. First empty object, then previous, and messages. Let's previous messages and new message, and finally return updated message list. Let's save this. Let's check the terminal if there is any error, and it looks like we do have error. We forgot to install a dependency. Let's do it now. Let's just copy this and go to Frontend directory and npm install. Now it should be working. Let's save this again, and yeah, it's working. So we want the subscribe to more method to run only once, so we have to give empty dependency array to use effect, like this. So you might be thinking that this is done, but let me tell you, there is a small gotcha. Let me show you. Let me log in like this. We have two earlier messages. Let me another message, and we don't receive that message, but when we refresh and log in again, we get this message. So what's the problem? Let me tell you. When we go to subscription file, here in typedef, we have not defined the query type. So this schema expects to know the query for which the subscriptions are being called. So we have to basically give the query type, like messages of type array of message. So let's save this and let's check this one more time, like login, hi, and the message instantly appears. Let's add another user to this chat. And let's add one more. As we can see, the message is instantly appearing. So we have made this real-time chat application using GraphQL subscriptions with express-graphql. So you should give a pat on your back. And that's it for today's video. I hope you liked it. Please let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Also, like, share and subscribe to my channel, and also press the bell icon so you can get the notification whenever I post a new video. Signing off. Thank you.